Oh, Alicia, what did you bring?
I brought my camera and lens.
That was almost disturbing, but we'll come back to that. Thank you. Kathy, what did you bring?
I brought my Garmin InReach satellite communication device.
Okay. Oh, we're in for a treat. I never know what people are going to bring, and it always gives me a level of excitement. So I'm curious about why you brought what you brought. With all that said, my name is Valerie Hope, everyone. Welcome to Not Quite Strangers. This podcast is all about inspiring curiosity, which curiosity piqued with these objects for sure, but also building connection. And in just a moment, you'll learn why I brought these two together. And more than anything, the fact that we're having a conversation between two people who have never met before is all about disrupting the status quo. And that's what this podcast is all about. Thank you all so much for joining. Please go to www.notquitestrangers.com to subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode. You can also subscribe on my YouTube channel, Connect to Joy, so that every time a new episode is out, you get a notification. Now, for my two guests, I'm going to start off with Alicia, because your name starts with an A, and you have a very intimidating looking object with you, and so it makes me a little scared. So Alicia and I have known each other maybe 2 years, 3?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, something like that. 3 years, maybe let's call it 3 years. It was definitely pre-pandemic. And we met each other because we were both Toastmasters in the Dallas, Texas area. And I think one of the things that really struck me, Alicia, and I don't remember, I'm trying to remember the first time. I feel like you've always been in my life because we connected so quickly. We always act silly when we're together, except for today. Today we're serious.
Yeah, very serious.
Today, this is important. But most of the time we're quite silly and playful. And I just so appreciate it. I remember we went on a road trip for Toastmasters to Louisiana a few years back. And that was a hoot. I think we talked the whole way down. We go deep, we have fun. I mean, all of it. And so I appreciate you.
Yeah, you talked a lot.
I did. I was going through a hard time. And so I really appreciate you listening. I wasn't. You were the hard time. But so Kathy, now you have a little flavor of this is how it might go on some occasion with Alicia. But the reason I invited Alicia to the show, beyond the fact that I really just love talking with her, is she has a passion for nature, has a passion for wildlife. She and her husband have forever and ever gone on these wonderful trips to Yellowstone National Park and has always come back jazzed about every single experience. A lot of the experiences she shared with me. And I thought she should probably share it with more people. And so I thought, the podcast would be perfect, but who would I introduce her to who loves nature as much? And now enter Kathy Holcombe. Kathy and I met because both of us took a course in a heroic public speaking course. It was so maybe we met almost a year now. I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's been like 8-9 months or something, maybe a little longer. And I remember, Kathy, you sharing, I don't even remember exactly the moment, but we had these Zoom classes and we'd have these lectures, and every once in a while, somebody would have an opportunity to share their speech topic and kind of what they were dealing with and why they brought it up. And Kathy, I remember you said something about adventure and how important that was to you, and that you wanted to basically democratize adventure. You wanted everybody to have a sense of adventure in different areas of life. And I was like, me too. I want adventure. And so you and I ended up having a one-on-one and just chatting. And I was so impressed because of some of the stuff that you and your family do. And yeah, I'll let you share more about it, but your lifestyle is so geared for exactly that, of having adventure in all areas of life. You demonstrate that, you and your family do. And I was like, only Kathy could meet Alicia and have something that would be beyond just, this is what I like, this is why, that you guys could totally elevate the idea of adventure and nature and bring those two together. So that's why I invited you guys to the podcast. Thank you for saying yes.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Now, all of that said, I'm trying to remember when you got my version of how we met. Anything that you would add to that interaction when we were strangers? Either
Well,
one.
I remember sitting in class and we were sharing our big ideas about how we were going to change the world, right? And I remember you talking about this, about meeting a stranger and breaking down these barriers and how magical it was. And, I'm just super excited to experience this because it totally blew me away when you first started talking about it. So, yeah, it was a great first meeting and a growing friendship ever since.
So my brand of adventure, Kathy, welcome.
Truly.
So cool. And Alicia, anything you want to add?
I remember we volunteered, the Toastmasters group volunteered at a PBS station here in Dallas. I had not seen her ever before. I'm sure our paths crossed before that, but someone wanted a group photo of all the volunteers. We gathered up and I ended up somehow in the back. Well, I'm 5'2" and Valerie's like 8 feet tall. And she turned and looked at me. She goes, "Oh no, you need to be up here." And she made a little quip about my height. And I was like, "Oh, I like you."
It was a positive quip, I'm sure.
Sure. We're still friends, right?
It worked. It worked.
It worked. It
And
worked.
she came out in the picture, which is the best part.
I did what?
You actually showed up in the photo.
Oh, I did. I wasn't behind a very tall woman.
8-foot woman. I'm not 8 feet. I'm not 8 feet, but I look like it on screen. Most people can't tell how tall I am by sitting. That's so cool. Oh, well, right before we started the podcast, you had an opportunity as we were doing our sound check to have a brief intro, and we discovered that both of you are from the same state. So, okay, now we can continue that conversation because I was like, no, save it for the show. But now continue.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, it was really interesting when I mentioned my accent, because I say weird things because I'm from Arkansas. We just have a different accent. And I said, because I'm from Arkansas. And she goes, "Oh," Kathy says, "Oh, where?" Exactly. It's a Little Rock area. She goes, "Oh, I'm from Hot Springs." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So that was my take on it.
Like an hour away from each other, not even that. So that's pretty remarkable.
It really is.
Coming together just that close growing up.
When did you move away from Arkansas, from Hot Springs? Oh, sorry.
Well, I went to Hendrix College whenever I graduated. And then from there, my husband and I moved out to Colorado to start our life of adventure out here. And then we moved from Colorado into an RV in 2014 and have been traveling the world ever since. So Arkansas roots, but I feel like the whole world is home.
Oh, I totally understand that. Yeah.
Wild. Did you just have a power outage, Kathy?
I just had my light go off. So maybe I'll just readjust a little bit. There we go.
All right, there you go.
It's all good.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Arkansas. No, I'm kidding. You're not in Arkansas right now. Where are you now?
I'm in Colorado right now.
You
So
are.
I'm in Buena Vista, Colorado, right on the Arkansas River. So the water right outside is going right home.
Oh, that's so funny. Now, okay, since you brought up the accent, I'm curious, what is the accent? Because I don't know if I can distinguish the two of you using an Arkansas accent.
So my accent comes back when I drink wine and talk to my mom. So because we've traveled so extensively and I've lived so many places since then, my accent changes depending on where I am and who I'm with. So
Me too. Oh, totally get that. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, Valerie, you wrote a really beautiful essay the other day about picking up and mimicking other accents when you're with that group of people, I also do the same. When I go home, though, I always revert back to that draw. It's a draw. And if I wanted to say wasn't earlier, that's where this came out. I said wasn't. You know, we kind of merged syllables together, and that's an Arkansas accent.
Ooh, can you guys speak to each other in Arkansanese?
Oh, that would be asking way too
Arkansanese.
much.
Whoa. A glass of wine. I don't know.
I was not opposed to having wine. Grubhub, can you? No.
It may come out over time, you know.
It'll come
We have to
out.
develop rapport.
Okay, it'll come out.
I'll have a fixin' or something like that come out here any minute.
Exactly.
I'm fixing to
Y'all,
do
I
it.
lived in Texas 20 years, and Alabama is where I went to high school and college. So I'm like, I could totally understand it. Yeah. Both of you brought some objects that you feel connects you to your love for nature and your love for adventure. So I would love to hear more about these objects. We'll start with Alicia. If you could share this very impressive, slightly intimidating. I'm like, are you a sharpshooter?
I am not a sharpshooter.
She's a trained assassin.
Oh, it actually gets bigger.
Wow.
This is my Nikon D6. It's the latest Nikon body, and a 300, I'm sorry, I can't read.
800.
Yeah, 200 to 500 millimeter Nikon lens. And I take this setup as well as another camera and a smaller lens to Yellowstone every time we go. We travel to Yellowstone every year in our motorhome. We did have a fifth wheel that we pulled with a heavy duty truck. We have a lot of friends who full-time like you do, Kathy. And so I understand what you're doing, and I love it.
That's awesome.
So Alicia, no, hang on a second, go back to this. So it's not enough to just say, this is what I use to take pictures, because this is what I use to take pictures. So you gotta give us a little bit more than that, because that's some serious picture taking equipment.
Well, it is. And, it's over, it's about 12 pounds. I put it on a tripod. I carry a tripod with me. Basically, what we do is whenever we visit Yellowstone, my husband and I, we go there every year. We've been going since 2006, because I just remember the first time we went in 2006. As we were leaving, I had tears in my eyes and a lump in my throat. And I told my husband, we have to come back. Yellowstone stole my heart. And he has, bless his heart, he has made that come true every year. And we take our camera gear. I have this big camera. I also have a smaller camera that I carry on my hip, what they call a hip camera. I have my shoulder strap. So when I set up my big camera on a tripod in front of an animal, if we spot an animal like a black bear or a grizzly, a coyote, elk, bison, fox, when we set up when we put up our setup, if the animal approaches us and the lens is too long, then I can go to my other camera, which has a shorter lens, and I can capture the animal from that distance. But basically, the reason why we go to Yellowstone is to photograph wildlife. I've started taking landscape photos. I'm not a professional photographer by any means. It's just a hobby, and it's a passion to be in nature and outdoors.
Well, we definitely want to hear more, because you are now officially Alicia in the wild.
I am.
Do you have pictures there that people could see if they wanted to check them out?
Tonight, or you mean on my website?
On your website.
Yes.
On your website. You have to show us anything right now, but yes, if they go to your website, could they check out some of your?
It's my website is new and under construction, but yeah, you can certainly actually even go to my Facebook page and find photos that we've taken.
Cool. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes so that people can check out your photography. Oh my goodness. All right, Kathy, reactions, questions, any follow-up?
A million questions. we love Yellowstone. I want to know your animals. I want to know what you've seen while you're there, because we've spent a lot of time there as well. And my husband's a professional photographer, and that's how we make our living. And I love the Tetons and the Yellowstone down in the Tetons, which are adjacent. And I'm so curious to hear. I know you must have an amazing.
Oh, Kathy, we're losing your audio, but I think we got the question. You might need to go ahead and
An
dial
amazing animal story. Yeah.
Oh, you might need to go ahead and dial in, but in the meantime, Alicia, I think you got the question, right?
I did. The library, as a matter of fact, so I'm putting together a black bear presentation that I'm giving a presentation tomorrow about Yellowstone black bears. And I'm going through year after year. This is the first time I'm going to be talking about black bears. I've talked about grizzly bears, I've talked about Yellowstone, but thousands of photos I'm going through and trying to find the ones that will make an impact. But yeah, we've seen everything from elk mothers with their calves, bison mothers with their calves. This past year, it's kind of sad, but we watched a funeral procession of bison. I know that sounds weird, but a bison had been killed, and there was an actual procession of bison giving their respects to the deceased bison. And it was just, it was so touching. And I've seen mother otters who have had to grab their pups out of a den and move them because the river was raging, the water was just rolling, and the mother otter had to grab the pup out of the den and save them and take them to another place so that they wouldn't drown. We've watched a couple of grizzlies courting. As a matter of fact, we've been blindsided by these grizzlies, and I could tell that later. But you know, we've seen so many amazing things, and I love sharing those stories to inspire people to get out in nature and see what it's all about.
I love that. All right, Kathy, can we hear you on your phone now? No, not yet.
Okay.
Okay.
How about that?
Yes, I think your computer is unmuted, but let's keep going. Let's roll.
Okay. All right. Let me know if it fades. That's amazing. That's the animals to me, the wildlife is why I go out as well. I mean, it's such an amazing, special thing. And that energy, whenever you see this wild being out there and you interact with it and make eye contact, and with your big lens, I'm sure you're like right on it. It's just one of the most magical, powerful things out there.
Kathy, to that point, sometimes you don't realize that the animal is looking at you because I'm looking through the lens. And I'm just, have the shutter down and going, and then when I look back at my photos and I see that animal is looking directly at me, it makes me emotional each and every time. And now that's happened over the years. And now when I see that happening, I stop photographing and I connect with the animal. I just have to now. It just is special.
Yeah, it's a special gift to experience that.
Oof.
How did you experience that? When did you first experience that?
Oh my gosh. So many different times. I think probably my earliest memory of that was going out into the wild in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, with my parents on a boat. And we had a gray whale that came right up like touching our boat.
Oh.
And I remember it rolling on its side. I was about 5 years old. And my memory is that its eye was the size of like a playground kickball. And I remember this giant eye looking, and I was leaning over the edge of the boat. And I mean, it was probably only a couple of minutes, but it felt like forever. And we just stared at each other, and at it, and then it dove underneath our boat and came up the other side and breached completely and smashed into the water. And it was just this powerful, I was like, whoa, that is so big. And how lucky we are to be able to see that and experience that.
Oof. It's interesting because as I hear the two of you share this passion for, in this case, we're talking specifically about wildlife, but being a part of the life in the wild, right? It's not just observing it. It sounds like these two moments for the two of you have been like to be present and be connected. What is it that drives the two of you? And Kathy, I'd like to hear more. I know you have an object you want to share with us too, but I'm just curious, what is it that connects you so deeply in those moments?
I think to me, it's just a moment to pause and really be there. And it's a deep curiosity. I want to know what's happening. I want to try to understand, because I have a huge amount of respect for wildlife. We were in Alaska one time, and we were watching grizzlies eat salmon in the river. They were feeding on salmon, and our daughter was about 10 years old, and we were able to park our RV right on the side of the river. And we watched and watched and watched. And it was a mom with two cubs, and she's teaching them how to fish and how to hunt. And, Abby's asking a million questions, and we're just taking it all in. And I just think that we can learn a lot about ourselves and the world by pausing and slowing down and taking in those moments and just connecting with everything that's going on around us, the sights and the smells and the light and the temperature, and all of that comes together. I mean, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. When that all comes together and you stop to take it in, it's magic.
Must be something in Arkansas, because that also sounds intimidating. Intimidating. I mean, these moments, I've seen wildlife, and I think these moments where I get to see something that's unique, probably at a distance. I don't think I've had the experiences that you've described of having that face-to-face, eye-to-eye connection. For me, is more like a novelty, it's not the deep spiritual experience that I hear the two of you share, but it also sounds kind of scary in some ways to me. It could be perceived anyway. So I'm curious, any fear, Alicia, in those moments? You're talking about a black bear that's staring back at you, or a grizzly that's staring back at you, or a huge whale that's underneath your boat. Fear?
No, there's peace. Kathy, I think you'll agree. You get it's really weird to explain. It's both excitement with peace and calm. And for me, it's my heart just glows. I just get warm. Yeah.
I would call it wonder.
Wonder.
Yeah. And I mean, I have a huge, healthy respect for things bigger than me. And so part of it is knowing how they behave and giving them space, and just paying attention to, because I mean, animals are somewhat predictable. And so if you watch them and understand them and give them space, usually you're safe.
It's fascinating. What you all describe, not with grizzlies, whales. I mean, I've seen bears, I've seen whales, not to the closeness you have, but I have that with horses. I don't know what it is about horses, but the times that I've ridden them, I've been with them different places too. I've ridden horses in Costa Rica, in Argentina, all over the States. And I don't even know why. I have no idea what it is about horses. We didn't grow up with them. My mother also has a love for horses too. But when I've been with a horse and I look into the horse's eye, I have what you both described. Now, I don't consider the horse a wild animal. Most of the horses I've interacted with have been in some sort of, domestic environment, right? They're in a ranch, they're some sort of corral, right? They're being ridden for entertainment, that kind of thing. So it must be different, especially when the animal's out in the wild and they've not been tamed, they've not been trained, they're not harnessed. I mean, they're just out there. That's fascinating. Whew. Anyway, well, I want to kind of go back into the object Kathy brought. So I know beyond just making intense eye contact with gray whales, that you like to make your way around nature. So tell us about what you brought.
And I'm so curious to know what Kathy has brought and what she does with it. I can't wait.
So this is my ticket to freedom and confidence and ambition to try crazy things. This is a satellite messaging device, and we got this in 2018, and it has two-way messaging. So basically, I can send out a text message or receive one from anywhere. And what that's done for me is it allowed me to go on a backpack trip all by myself across Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And it was something I'd always wanted to do. I'd always dreamed about it, but I didn't have the confidence to do it by myself. And I was like, well, if I can talk to my husband every once in a while, he could give me weather reports. And if something goes horribly wrong, I can figure it out together with someone else, with another human. It's just a connection point. And that led to a 70-mile backpack trip across Great Smoky Mountain National Park, which led to 1,000 miles of self-powered adventure across North America. And it's allowed me a whole different experience in the wilderness, because we've done a million adventures together, my husband and I, along with our daughter, big things, way in remote places. But when I have to be the one that makes all the decisions and carries all the weight and has to progress across these vast wilderness areas independently, there's a huge amount of responsibility and accomplishment with pulling that off on your own. And so that is it's the best tool that I have. And I feel like it's just unlocked this whole other world that I get to explore at my own pace and on my own terms, which I really love.
That's fascinating. And I got hats off to you, Kathy, because I've heard of some of the things that you did. Now, I know you said you were going on a 300-mile journey recently, or 200 something mile journey recently.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience and how it ended up.
So I had a 3-week gap between two events. And so the Colorado Trail intersects both of the events in Colorado. There's kind of a midway point in Buena Vista, Colorado, and it ends in Durango, and it's 280 miles between the two. And I was like, well, I've got 3 weeks, I'll walk. And
of course
Peter and my husband, Peter, and daughter Abby looked at me and they're like, well, we're going to drive because that's crazy. And we'll see you there in 3 weeks. And so it was a pretty ambitious goal. I had to cover at least 14 miles a day, which is pretty far. And so I made it 50 miles. So it was an adventure that I didn't get to finish. But I think that might have been exactly what I needed in that time, because I've done all these things and I've been successful. And I was feeling, at least on the last couple of adventures, like I knew I could do it. I had it in the bag. It was just like grind out the miles and get it done. And this one was hard. It was really hard. I had a 40-pound pack on and it was steep terrain. And I started in the monsoon season. And so the weather, it rained the first 4 days. So everything I had was soaked and heavy. And on day 5, I got caught in a lightning storm. And as I was running down the hill, I tweaked my knee a little bit. And it's funny, the speech that I was working on with Valerie was all about like perseverance and gumption, and you can do this, you just have to go for it and don't stop and all of these things. And on day 5, I was like, I can't walk. Like there's no persevering through this. And it was this really hard thing. And I was writing about it on social media, and I talked about it, and it's just walking. Like, I can walk this far. I know I can do this. And so it was a lot of soul searching to throw in the towel and be like, okay, I'm not going to do this now. I'm going to put a pause. I'm going to give my body time to heal. I'm going to get some lighter gear and I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this with somebody else, because it's tough by yourself. And so it was interesting to learn that about myself, because I'd had a lot of other experiences. And I think that might have been exactly what I needed for this trip. The wilderness, it teaches you what you need when you need it.
Alicia, looks like you have a question.
Well, I actually have a couple. Number one, I do understand what you're talking about, but having that moment where you're thinking, I've got to quit, I've got to give up something that I love, that I wanted to accomplish. But you learn from it. You become a better person, and then you're prepared for the next time. So I know you'll complete that goal. I know you will. And my question to you is, when you were in the Smoky Mountains, I'd like to hear you recall a day or a moment, because, sometimes we're just in the moment. Like, even with my camera, I'm photographing the animal and I'm just, and then all of a sudden something happens and it's just so special, magical. Did that happen to you in the Smoky Mountains somewhere?
Yes. It seemed like something like that happened daily, but the biggest moment, and I'll give you the quick version, is on the next to the last day, after I'd done almost 50 miles, a hurricane came through the Appalachians.
What?
Unexpected. I'd hiked a bunch in the West, but I didn't know about hurricanes in the mountains. That was new to me. And the last night, right before I was going to finish, I get a message from Peter, and he's like, oh my God, you better hunker down. This is really bad. And on the AT, they have these stone shelters. And so I raced through a hurricane with trees crashing and pounding rain. The trail turned into a creek, and I made it to the shelter. And it was this moment that was like, I'm so close. I'm 16 miles from the end, and there's a hurricane outside. And there was an evacuation point that I could do 5 miles to get to a trailhead, or I could go 16 miles to the end. And I messaged Peter on my Garmin, and I was like, okay, I can't go anywhere right now. It's too dangerous to leave the shelter. Let's figure this out in the morning. And so it rained all night long. The rain was coming under the shelter roof, and everything was soaked. And I fell asleep eventually through all of that. And at 4 a.m, Peter dinged me on my Garmin and said, you've got a clearing, go to the end.
Wow.
And I was like, the end, like finish? And he's like, yeah, run, charge, go, you've got a break. I looked out, and the clouds are swirling, but the rain has stopped and it's not windy. And I'm running down the trail, and pretty soon this whole valley opens up, and it's like sunrise, and I can see some blue in the sky. And I sat down on a rock. And that moment, I realized that I was going to finish it. And that was powerful. And I didn't even want to move. I had fought all these things. It felt like everything had been a battle to that moment. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want it to end. I love this. And so sitting on that rock, watching the sunrise and taking all that in, that was a magical moment.
Wow.
Oof.
That gives me chills. I love it.
I just want to be clear. So this is the one experience you mentioned that you did on the first one you did on your own. That was that first experience.
Yes.
So 16 miles from the end is where you had that moment, the hurricane, and then this incredibly peaceful moment. You know, what I can't stop thinking about is, look, I have 3 brothers. I'm the only girl. all my three brothers are Eagle Scouts, so they've had their share of outdoor adventure. I actually even joined them because I thought the Girl Scouts were kind of lame when I was growing up. I mean, this is the 80s. They were doing like brownies and stuff. My brothers would come back telling all these grand tales of being out and, I don't know, killing a chicken with their bare hands. And I thought I wanted to do that, but they had cool stuff to share and I just didn't have enough. And so I did some volunteering at the Boy Scout camp and it was humbling, some stuff. And you have to dig your own hole to go to the bathroom. And I mean, there's stuff that I'm just like, oh, I don't know if I do that. I mean, I did it because I could, like, I can do anything you can do kind of thing. But on my own, yeah. So I'm curious from the two of you, first of all, women, we just don't talk about this aspect of, at least not women that I interact with on a regular basis. Don't talk about nature and the wilderness or being in the wild or engaged the way the two of you are. So I'm curious about what do you talk about with other women? Or do you have a lot of women in your circle who love wilderness and being out in the wild like the two of you? Alicia, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting. I have formed a community through my previous work as a speaker coach and strategist, working with coaches, entrepreneurs, freelancers, business owners, helping them with their speaking business or their speaking so that they can make business. So I have all of those types of friends, people who are very business oriented. I love this community because they've supported me and encouraged me to finally go to live in my heart passion, which is being a wildlife storyteller, a wildlife advocate, and of course, photographer. So I'm not ready to pass up my existing community, but I do want to add people like Kathy. And I'm starting to reach out to others. I'm part of a Facebook group for women wildlife photographers. I want to be connected with other women who love this as much as I do.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Valerie. And on that note, Valerie was extremely instrumental in introducing me to, he was the conservation director at the Dallas Zoo, who invited me to be a board member on the Texas Black Bear Alliance. So now I'm building relationships, in Texas regarding wildlife. And I've met some amazing women and men, but there's a couple of women who work with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And I'm just like, I'm just so thankful for Valerie introducing me to strangers.
Well, you know what? I'm mostly thankful for you just giving yourself the opening to pursue your passion. You talk so much about what you, in the context, Kathy, just so you know, the context that Alicia and I met each other in was Toastmasters, both of us in district roles or officer roles. So we were not just giving speeches, it was really about building the community and supporting, developing other people. And Alicia, you've been so instrumental for me too. But I think the more you talked about it, I'm like, why aren't you giving more speeches about this stuff? Oh my gosh, you send out a calendar for free to everybody of all your wildlife pictures. Like, why? Oh my goodness, they're so, and so I think part of it is just connect. When I see someone in that so thoroughly loves and there's so much joy and passion. I mean, it's not just like a hobby for you. It's really, it's a gift. What you have and what you express and what you give is really a gift. And I'm like, why would you not like give it away and do it in the highest level? And so that's why I'm like, okay, go meet some folks. I'm not that person. But.
Well, to that point, and I'll make this quick, is one of the reasons why it was really hard for me to jump right into it and not do it sooner than later. I had in my mind that I had to be a professional photographer, that I had to have a photography business, that I had to have covers on magazines or at least in articles of magazines, or that I had to sell these. But when I realized that I could just share my stories that will impact people, that's when I pushed that block, that hesitation out. And Valerie was a lot of help on that too.
Totally. So Kathy, Alicia definitely has to do heroic public speaking course, because that's a whole different community of folks, specifically around speaking. But I think that what you have and the message you have will be amplified and directed in such a way that we'll talk more. We'll talk more about it later. But anyhow, whoo. And Kathy, what about you? What does your community look like? And do you have a lot of other women that enjoy what you do?
So my community is almost all professional kayakers, and the people that we spend the most time with are the best in the world at the sport. So I'm kind of the baby of the group. And I'm the one that they are always coaxing along saying, you can do this, you're going to be fine. And so, technically all of my friends are much more astute than I am, and these phenomenal athletes, but they don't go way out in the wilderness like I do, which is why I end up going by myself a lot, because, there's just not a lot of people that are willing to walk 300 miles with 40 pounds on your back.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk my dog some nights. I mean,
I sometimes don't leave my apartment.
Right. I feel that too.
Pandemic is because of the pandemic.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that in this arena, in the adventure sports arena particularly, there are some pretty powerful all women experiences that happen, and I've been a part of a few of them. And the dynamic is so unique when you get a group of only women out doing something. That there's a lot more collaboration and cooperation and support, and I love going out with families and men and all kinds of things too. I'm not saying that, but there's an amazing thing that happens. I paddled from Key Largo to Key West with a group of 5 women. And it's one of my all-time favorite trips that I ever did, because, when somebody was tired, there was another person right beside singing some obnoxious 1980s song in your head to just keep you paddling as you could get the miles done, or whatever it was. Just the camaraderie was something that I hadn't experienced any other way.
I'm ready to find that, Kathy, and I'm excited that that's on my horizon, because when you told me that you have made adventures with just yourself, when I was in my 20s, I actually backpacked across Europe alone because I didn't have any other friends that wanted to do that with me. And Valerie, I know that you've had adventures alone because you wanted to see, you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And you just did it, whether someone went with you or not.
I didn't invite anybody. It's like, it's going to be my trip. I get to do what I want to do. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes it's a little boring. So, but no, I totally get it. I think, my brand of adventure has more to do with novelty. As I listen to the two of you, I don't have the level of commitment to go do the same thing and go deeper and longer. For me, it's, I'm going to go zip line in Utah. Cool. Oh, wow. We're going to go, hiking to a volcano in Costa Rica. Yay. But it's like these unique, interesting experience, especially when it has to do something with the culture. I will tell you one of the silliest things I ever told anybody. And I used to, right out of college, I went to work for an organization that was based in Colorado, in Broomfield, Colorado, called Up With People. And I remember I was part of the staff. And so every once in a while we were there for several months in training. And, every year we'd go back for some additional training. And there are quite a few of the people who were based in Colorado. Not all of us were, but several based in Colorado who would love to do outings with the staff as a team building or, bonding kind of thing. And everything had to do with something with nature. We're going to go hike somewhere. We're going to go. And I was like, again, seriously? And I remember saying, I was in my 20s. I remember saying, I could never live in Colorado because I do not appreciate nature the way you guys do. It was like the silliest thing to say. It was silly. It was really silly. But I just remember being so turned off. Like, I can't enjoy this day because you clearly want to do too many things outside. Now I'm older. I get it. I'm not quite the city girl I used to be.
No, you have a squirrel that you talk to on your balcony.
I don't talk to the squirrel.
All right.
The
But-
stairs. It used to. It doesn't anymore. It was just a wintertime
okay.
fling.
Oh, okay.
But I just remember being so present to the mentality and the commitment that people had that I interacted with towards the outdoors that I didn't share. But and Kathy, that's one of the things that I think drew me so much to your message and your speech. Because tell us the big idea, because I think that would also be compelling.
Yeah. My big idea is that we all need outdoor adventure. And it doesn't have to be backpacking 300 miles, that we all just need to be outside, even in short bursts, 20 minutes, an hour, going on a walk. There's a whole bunch of research about how the wilderness impacts our overall well-being and how it can be just as effective treating depression and anxiety 20 minutes a week. And so I believe that we all need more adventure in our life, and that we're all on this continuum, and wherever you are at the particular moment, that's what you need.
See, I believe that. I think that's amazing. I think the two challenges that come up for me is one, we've been in the pandemic mode for almost 2 years here. And so I think when you and I met and you said that, I was like, oh, I miss having some adventure. I don't do the travel that I used to do. And that's what was bringing me some of that. So that's one piece. And then the other piece is, I think also as a woman, I feel much more fearful about doing things out in the wilderness by myself. Like I feel there's a level of threat, not even the animals, I don't think, to be honest with you. I hear kidnappings and rape and I'm not going. I'm sorry. My brothers did share ones that, we're from Panama originally, but we're Black. And they did share often that they met several other Black people, specifically from the US, who mentioned that being outdoors also generationally, the stories that you heard about people being lynched and being hung out in the forest, like being alone in the woods, was like the worst thing that a Black person could do during, moments in history, very long moments of history, like hundreds of years in this country. And so that was the other thing that was in my head, because we lived in Alabama, for goodness sakes, for 8 years. At least I did. And so some of that also kind of seeps in there. But anyways, but I just wanted to share that and hear kind of what do you get out of that? Or what have you heard or seen that maybe that resonates there?
I think there's so many layers to that. As women, we're told all our lives, be careful, don't go by yourself, watch out for all these dangers. And, honestly, in the wilderness is where I feel the most safe from other people, because it takes a lot of effort to get out there. I feel much more at risk from other people in a city because there's a lot of people that who knows what they're thinking.
Can't argue with that. Yeah.
Especially if you're in the backcountry, people aren't going to, there's, I don't know. It's just too difficult.
The backcountry.
Backcountry.
It's a lot of work. And then, it's often very similar to being in a city. You have to be very situationally aware of what's going on all around you. And, know your environment and know the potential risks. Know if a hurricane could come through the mountains, because, that could be devastating. And so, just like you have your city demeanor and your city attitude and all of that, you have to have that in the woods too. And so it comes with practice. And that's what I think is so important as you make your way into taking on adventure. You do it a little bit at a time. For my mom to go on a mile walk in a city park by herself, it's a big deal. And it's scary to her. But when she does it for a month, every day for a month, all of a sudden it's normal. So then maybe going to a trailhead and doing a mile there, you develop comfort, just like anything else that you do. So
make it sound so approachable. Alicia, do you guys camp? I know you do RV stuff, but what other things do you and your husband do that would be in the adventure bucket?
So, one of the things that we touched on earlier is about, or you mentioned about going back to the same place. I have gotten, there have been a couple of years recently, because we've been doing this for 16 years every year. I've thought, there's other national parks out there, So, and we've made a little dent into some of them. Of course, our primary focus is wildlife, but that doesn't mean we're not going to go to Acadia National Park or to, sequoias or redwood forest. I mean, those are beautiful places, and we've actually been there. But, as far as the safety is concerned, if you're going to Yellowstone, you got to know what the weather is. Like Kathy said, you got to know the weather. You got to have the right attire, because in Yellowstone, in May, it can still snow on you. In June, it can still snow on you. I've had that happen. It can be hot. It can be cold. You need hiking boots or long pants, sweaters, etc. But most importantly, there's two other things you need to know. You need to know the regulations. You need to know the rules. How far away do you need to be from a certain animal? For, foxes, coyotes, bison, it's 25 yards. For grizzly bears and black bears and wolf, it's 100 yards. So you've got to have that in your head. You've always got to be searching and looking, is the animal approaching you? Mm. And then you have one tool in case you need to deploy it. It's bear spray. Kathy has her Garmin satellite phone. We carry our bear spray with us every time. It's hooked onto my belt, and my husband hooks his onto his tripod. So, and I guess he keeps one in his back pocket too. So that's how we maintain safety.
You stay safe. All right. So I might be oversharing here. I'm definitely going to overshare here, but because I want to tee up. So I'm going to ask you the same question. I have gone camping. That's, even though it's not something that I would do the way you all do it. But I remember on 2 occasions, I went with a great friend of mine. He loved outdoor stuff. And so I love being with somebody who's confident about it and that knows places. And I'm like, oh, I'll go. Sure. The first time we went someplace in Oklahoma and camped overnight. And I was, it was my time of the month. It was just, it was tedious. It was, oh my gosh, it was tough. It was only overnight. It was still like the most uncomfortable. So that's one. And I remember the second time we went to Big Bend National Park and spent the night someplace, I don't know, out in the middle of nowhere. This was not like official campsites. That's the thing. It was like a tent, and he had his truck, and I would have to go to the back, behind the truck kind of thing. And both times I remember it was my time of the month. And it was like, why does this happen to, well, I wasn't paying. I should have known, but I didn't want to say no because that was the time that he wanted to go. But I made it. I made it work. The second time I knew better, and I actually got one of those little, mini pop-up tent things with a toilet seat. It's like I set myself up because I was not going to go through the whole like squatting behind a truck and all that. But I am curious, because as women, we have to deal with other things. So do you have a story or a moment?
I do.
Do share.
I am so mad. I am so angry about this incident. I know that sounds really dramatic, but you have to understand is that grizzly bear number 399 is my bear in Grand Teton National Park. Okay, I know she's everybody's bear, but she's the most famous bear in the world. Everybody flocks to Grand Tetons to photograph her because she's so visible with her cubs. I met her for the first time in 2006 with her 3 cubs. She's had 3 cubs, 2 cubs, 1 cub throughout the years. 16 years later, or 15 years later, last year, she turned 24 years old, and all of us, the regulars, the locals, the renowned photographer, she won't have a litter. She just won't have a litter. She came out with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 cubs. 4. It's astounding. It's not common. Mm-hmm. COVID hits and cancels my spring trip. And I'm seeing photo after photo of everybody who, said, forget COVID, I'm going to the park. And there's my mom with 4 cubs, cute little cubs. And I'm just sick about it. Total FOMO. And that fall, we ended up going. FOMO, fear of missing out, just in case you didn't know.
Not a different virus. No.
Not a different one. That fall, we decided to go. Okay. 4 days. I specifically spent 5 nights in Grand Tetons to find her. 4 nights in the Tetons and 2 days of Yellowstone we spent in the Tetons, driving 150 miles each way, 2 days, and then in the Tetons. Finally saw her on one day, one of those days, like the 3rd day. She's across the river. The sun is coming towards us. So the sun is in our eyes, which means
the sun, not her cub. You mean
not
like
her cub,
actual...
not her son or daughter. The literal orange big ball in the sky is glaring down on us, and all you see are silhouettes. I mean, not even good silhouettes of the grizzlies. The grass is tall, and I'm like, oh my God. Sat out there for 3.5 hours. Oh, this is a longer story than I thought. 3.5 hours, and I had to pee. There's no facilities around in a wild park, And I'm thinking, well, do I leave myself? How do I do this? I don't want to leave. Well, I texted a friend who was watching her from the other end of the river. And I said, hey, we're going to head out. We'll be back in a little bit. I've got to relieve myself. He's like, okay, see you later. I swear to God, we had left, my husband and I had packed up our stuff, left the parking lot. 15 minutes later, Bill texts me and says, she just crossed the river. You missed it.
Oh.
I do not know a workaround, but I'm going to find one. And that's a pitfall of being a woman, especially with a small bladder.
You could have gone in the river. No, is that unless it was closer to 25 yards?
Well, there were 200 people. And Kathy, how cold would that water be in September? Yeah.
Point
Very
taken.
cold. Yeah. Very
Point
cold.
taken.
Not too far from the... Yeah.
Point taken.
Drama.
All right, Kathy, what about for you? We cannot end this conversation until you share some sort of embarrassing, well, not embarrassing, some sort of nature call.
Nature calling.
Yeah. Well, this is another one where I was trying something new by myself. And I decided I was going to kayak all the way across the Everglades. So there's a 100-mile trail called the Wilderness Waterways Trail. And they have they call them chickies. And basically it's a deck that sticks up out of the Everglades that you can camp on. Oh. And I was like, perfect. I'm going to be up above the gators and all the scary things that live in the Everglades. And this is going to be amazing. What I failed to consider was that it's 10 miles between the chickies. And that's, I had 1 day of wind and it took me 12 hours to get from one to the other chickie. And the Everglades are composed of mangroves that just have porous roots that stick down. There's no land anywhere. It was open water the whole way. So after 12 hours of sitting in a kayak, and there was no way I was getting in the water because, there's scary things that live in there. So I had to sit in my boat for 12 hours. That was a bladder of steel day, but it was really hard. Unfortunately, the wind was only bad that day. It was a headwind that day. So other day I made much better time. But that particular day was the longest period between bathrooms.
Wait. You lasted 12 hours without actually having to, you didn't relieve yourself at all?
I didn't, because I didn't want to go in my boat because that was yucky. And the water is, there are gators everywhere. Yeah. And there are even crocs in the Everglades, and there's giant snakes, and you can't see in the water. It's all tannic and yucky. And yeah, there was no way I was going.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't have done it. And especially I know that urine is sterile. So, you know, and
That's
that
true.
Bear Giles, he drinks it,
Oh.
you know.
Yeah, that's a bad idea.
I know it
Well,
is.
what it would have probably called the Gators over or something like, human.
Kathy, isn't that a fear of you swimming, like, or being in water if you're on, you know, menstruating or something? That would be my fear, is that it would call
Yeah.
alligators.
You know, so mainly what we do is whitewater, and usually in cold rivers, there's not too much to worry about other than rapids that'll take you out. But yeah, in the ocean, that's a whole different animal. So I generally stay in my boat in the ocean and go from land to land to land. Yeah.
That's
Wow.
so cool. You know, I just got to tell you guys, although I don't, like I said before, I don't necessarily share the same level of commitment. What this conversation has done is kind of, is like this reel in my head that's coming back of all these snapshots of things. Like I've done paddle boarding off the coast of Waikiki, like open ocean. I've seen whales in Maui. I've done horseback riding and like all these different moments, like the camping trips and stuff. And it's actually like, do kind of like nature in my own way. And I think the two of you have really highlighted the appreciation for it that I don't talk about very often. It's not something that I don't really connect to it the way you do. I don't take photography. I don't do regular trips. I think part of it is just always kind of gets buried. It's a moment in time. But I'm so grateful that I now have two people that we can geek out. I'll probably just watch and listen and criticize, but not criticize.
With us.
I'll mock. Unless we go on a trip together.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I'm down with that. I would go down with that.
Totally on board.
But I want to start to zoom out a little bit of our conversation, and I want to hear. I mean, obviously, the two of you did not know each other. We'd been talking about getting together for this podcast for several months. So I'm curious about what's it been like from the very moment when I reached out to you to talk about this with a random person to now. What's in your mind about this experience?
Yeah. So I love meeting new people. I love connecting with people all around the world. Excited about it. But at the same time, I was like, well, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I wonder if we're going to have anything in common.
About your bladder and the kayak.
Adventure, wildlife. I mean, if we kept talking, there would be a million other things. So What a joy this has been to connect on so many levels. It's been amazing.
I totally agree, Kathy. When you said, I agree that, gosh, there's so many things. I mean, we didn't even get into the RV life, and I mean, we glamp, we have a motorhome, but there's so much more to discuss. And when Valerie, you asked me last year, what do you think about this idea for a podcast? And I thought, I like it. Because I too like meeting people that I don't know, because you never know what you're going to learn. And I was so on board with it from the get-go and I wanted, in the spirit of doing it, I did not look up your name on Facebook. I didn't search you on Google or anything like that, because I wanted to experience this whole adventure.
And what an adventure it's been.
Oh, so exciting. And I hope that there's more, whether or not we do a trip all together. But definitely, I want to make sure the two of you connect. I do think that there's community of people who need other women like you, who need to also connect with their own inner adventure, whatever that looks like, however deep or however far that and wide that goes. Who knows? I think, especially this is a moment in time where a lot of people have been waking up to what they've missed in life, what they have buried, what they've forgotten about. Now they see that there's so many different aspects of living that they may have not experienced that now appeal to them. So this, I think it's going to be a nice little wake up conversation for other people. I'll make sure to put any contact information, if whatever you're willing to share, in the show notes. so that if other people want to build and invite you to be a part of their community or would like to join your community, they can do so. So I think that would be phenomenal. Any final thoughts or words as we begin to wrap up?
Just, take a moment out into nature, get to know it. It's not too late to repair the damage that us as humans have done. Protect wildlife, protect habitat. That's my message. And if you're on board with that, seek me out.
There we go. A message from the Black Bear Lions of Dallas, Texas.
That was good. You should be an announcer.
Little voiceover. Kathy.
And, Valerie, you say that you are not so into nature, but I can see your adventurous spirit shining through very clearly. And I encourage everyone listening to explore that and see what that adventurous spirit is that's inside. Do one thing that you're uncertain about and see how it goes. And that will lead to many, many more adventures.
All right. Well, now that you brought that up, I'm like, I have another question. Oh, okay. Last question. So between the two of you, I'd love to hear that one adventure that it's in the bucket list that you haven't done yet, or you haven't quite found the guts to do it. Like, what's that one thing? Like, I'll share mine. I would love to have a nomadic lifestyle in the desert, in the Saharan desert. If I could just hang out with some nomads for a week, and I don't know what they will do and how, I don't really care. That would be like on my bucket list. What about for you guys?
Okay, I have to jump on that for a second, because I'm going to Morocco next year to be in the desert and be under the night sky in the Sahara. And we're going to touch base, and that's going to be our adventure.
I want to do that.
Oh,
okay.
I said it first, Alicia.
Can I please come?
Okay.
That's our adventure.
Okay.
Eureka.
Oh my God.
Right. Oh my God.
I totally want to go to Morocco. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, then you have to pick something else, Kathy, that's on your list that you haven't done or you don't have in the books right now, but you've dreamt about it. Maybe you've been a little gun shy. I don't know any of that. Anything?
Oh, I'm doing this. So I'm going to be 50 in 2 years.
Okay.
And I'm planning my big adventure. This is like the big whopper bucket list. I want to paddle from Seattle to Alaska. Peter and I are planning this. It'll take 3 to 4 months, and it's over 1,000 miles and through the Inside Passage. I cannot wait. I'm so excited about it. And it's big and it's bold, but Peter's going with me. So I'm super excited.
Ooh, and you're talking kayaking.
Sea kayaking. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, bold. Yes.
So I think my adventure that's on my bucket list can tie in with yours, because my husband and I, we want to plan 3 to 4 months of traveling from Dallas all the way up through to Alaska, go through Canada, explore some of the Inside Passages, but take our motor home and just camp and see the wild and end up in Alaska somewhere.
That's so funny. So if you use your camera, you might see Kathy and her husband. You can take pictures.
Right. We can rendezvous.
She can text me from her Garmin.
Hey. You two have just been amazing. Thank you so much for saying yes to this experience and for sharing your passion for wildlife, your passion for being in nature, your passion for adventure with all of us. I know that there's somebody that listens to this podcast and they'll be inspired to even consider adventure from a different perspective, or be inspired to do something that they never thought they could do on their own because of what the two of you have shared today. So, so fun. And I know there's more conversation to come. We got to plan our trip to Morocco. So there's stuff that we're going to do. We'll let everybody know how it is. But thank you two so much for coming. And I want to thank the audience who's tuned in to listen to this fantastic episode of Not Quite Strangers. Again, if you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to go to notquitestrangers.com. So that way you don't miss a single episode, or you can go to the YouTube channel for Connect to Joy and subscribe there. And more than anything, go out and have a wonderful adventure, either meeting somebody that you've never met before or going to do something one of these two ladies have inspired us to do today. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of the day.
You've been listening to the podcast Not Quite Strangers. Be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite video or podcast platform. And for more information and content, go to notquitestrangers.com. See you next time.